spend some time in ahead. Well, I'm here to talk to the dead, and I'll spend the night. I'll spend the night in a murder scene, hoping some rubs off on me. Well, I don't get queasy, and I'll spend the night. Is it the fear I want to face? Is it the memory of the chase? Is it the blood I want to taste? I just don't know. Is it a lust for the profane, or a dream of the insane? Well, we just can't explain, and we'll spend the night. I'll spend the night on the battlefield, where the wounds never healed. We'll see what the worms reveal when I spend the night. I'll spend the night with the gallows pole. Welcome to Paranormal Tuesday, everybody. This is Mike from the See You on the Other Side podcast. And, of course, I am joined by my partner in crime, Miss Wendy Lynn. Wendy, how you doing?
Hello. Good evening. I'm great, thanks. How are you, Mike?
Well, it's been a good day. It's been a good day. Beautiful weather. I'm
That's
not going to
great.
complain. No, I will complain, but I'm going to try not to complain tonight as we talk about some stuff. Tuesday the 13th.
Yeah. Well, before we even start on that, I want to congratulate you on the wonderful Milwaukee Paracon weekend that we're coming off of.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, Wendy, you did a great job, too, telling some ghost stories and playing music. But there definitely, that was definitely a long weekend of paranormal activity on the internet and making sure that everything worked.
And that's not an easy thing to do. As much practice as we've all been having with the Zoom and the online business, like pulling off an actual like a full conference and having so many different presenters and so many different panels of people, like that was a lot of coordination, and I gotta hand it to you. You did a really great job. I thought it was exceptionally well-run event. So congratulations to you and to T. Krulos, whose event he originated.
Mm-hmm.
Am I frozen? Hello?
Yep, you were frozen for a second,
Woo.
but you're back. Anyway, Thank you very much, Wendy. Your check is in the mail.
Hey,
Your check is coming
all right.
in the mail.
Thank you.
So so you guys, we're gonna have some of that stuff on our YouTube channel coming up in the next few weeks. We'll have some stuff on the Sea on the Side on the American Ghost Walks YouTube channel and Milwaukee Paracon. So if you weren't able to attend this weekend, don't fret. You won't be able to enjoy some of the exclusive things like the screening of the Return to Wildcat Mountain and everything, but you will be able to enjoy some of the conversations we had with very cool people, maybe the Sunspot performance where we talked and played some music on Friday night, and more fun stuff. So that'll be up, and you'll be able to find that on the YouTubes, and of course we'll link to it for everybody. Anyway.
And speaking of the music front, Mike.
Yes.
This is news to you, but a small tragedy befell me this weekend.
A small tragedy? What happened on the music front? What happened?
Yeah, on the music front. I had my trusty acoustic violin, the one that I used in the latest videos that we made at the haunted locations here in Madison.
Yes.
And I was about to record myself playing some Irish tunes
Okay.
as I've been studying on the Online Academy of Irish Music.
Yes.
But the violin slipped out of my hand and went crashing onto the cement, and it broke. So
Wait, your acoustic violin that you've had like most of your life broke?
it went smashy, smashy.
Oh, Wendy, I'm sorry to hear that. I like my heart breaks for you. And
Yeah,
I have a very
it,
small, very cold, very hard heart. And it is
it was
broken.
traumatizing. I'm
Yeah.
not gonna lie, it was traumatizing seeing it the neck actually broke off of the body. So, yeah, so
Oh
it's
God. Okay.
I think it is repairable, so that's the good news. I gotta take it into the luthier. So everybody, please have some good violin
Yes.
thoughts. They
Some.
they sound like a little tiny violin playing
Oh
those
man, that
thoughts.
that does break my heart. Well, Wendy, I hope you get the. I hope it gets figured out, and hopefully the luthier
Thanks.
will help that for you. Actually, hey, Scott's got a pretty good comment though here that the C on the side page is sitting at 666 followers. So obviously
What?
that's metal AF. And we're gonna keep on working on that over time. So I'm sorry. That is that's a bad luck thing when we talk about Tuesday the 13th.
It was very bad luck. I didn't even take any pictures because I just didn't want to immortalize that sad moment.
No, of course not. I mean, that's not something you're supposed to commemorate something good. People didn't bring a Polaroid for the bad stuff.
Well, the pictures are a little cheaper nowadays, but the thing
No,
is,
but what
I
I mean
probably
is,
should have taken a picture to send to the luthier.
right? Oh, to be like, please God. Oh man, that's a tough one. That is a tough one. So Wendy, well, I mean, I guess the best I can send you is thoughts and prayers, and maybe maybe a couple
It's
of
okay.
maybe a couple of bucks if the luthier is too expensive, because I need you
It,
playing that too.
I know that's my biggest concern is just, having it available for the next time that we're gonna perform.
Live,
So
right?
gotta get on it quickly.
So it's I can't believe, number one, I can't believe it's October 13th already. Like, October is coming fast and furious.
And going fast.
Yes. And obviously, with Minnesota Paracon last weekend and the Milwaukee Paracon this weekend, I have been living the online dream of
The quarantine.
of the constant, right? Like, I now connect to the world through the internet more than
Have
I
you
can.
become one with your chair?
I mean, really, I'm glad I bought an expensive chair, which Amazon delivered late, so I complained, so they gave it to me for free.
What?
Yeah, I said, because the thing is, I wanted it by a certain date and it wasn't here. And then I'm like, what is this? They moved the date 2 days. I'm like, that I pay for Prime. And they're like, we'll refund you. And then it came the next day. Like, it came on
That's
time anyway.
amazing.
So I feel like Jeff Bezos, I got your $68 right here. And yes, $68 is what I consider an expensive chair.
Hey, that's a good investment. All the
Yeah.
time you spend in that thing.
You know, one of the things. So Wendy, I think you were already gone on Saturday night, and you were out playing drums in the recording studio. But one of the most interesting things I thought of the Milwaukee Paracon for me was there was like a 4-hour paranormal live stream investigation on Saturday night.
How did it go?
Well, I don't know if they picked anything up, but the thing was, it was for people who haven't been to an actual paranormal investigation, an actual ghost hunt. Sitting there for 4 hours with a night vision camera, just saying, "Is there anybody here? Can you
What is your name?
can you knock on the door if you're here?" Like, that is the best example. I've never seen, like, if you watch Ghost Hunters, right? They're like, they walk into a place and all of a sudden the ghost is tickling their balls. That would
Right. They boil it. It's boiled down to
Yeah.
just the exciting one.
Paranormal Lockdown is 44 minutes, of which 36 is probably actual footage, and 25 of that is
Right.
people is talking to the camera. So an actual paranormal investigation is 4 hours of going, like, looking around, seeing if anything happens, like feeling, and they did it. Like, there wasn't any kind of, and so I thought the Paranormal Investigators of Milwaukee, and I've been with them in a couple of investigations, and they're good. Just the way they all just sat there and they're like, okay, well, here's how we do it, guys. And they would explain the tech, and then they would sit there and they explain what they did. But then you sat through the entire thing. There wasn't
and
like.
What was the location, Mike?
The Chudnow Museum of Yesteryear.
Okay.
Which is like a kitschy Americana museum because it's got all this stuff from the early 20th century. So but it's buttons and products and things. So it's to give you like idea how the world looked in the 1920s to 30s.
Oh, that's quaint.
Yeah. And compared to like the day before, we did a paranormal investigation kind of at the Overture Center in Milwaukee. I'm sorry, in Madison.
Yeah.
Where that was basically, I mean, they didn't have an idea like for what we were supposed to do. So I was like, okay, well, here's the Ouija board, and let's sit on the stage and do the Ouija board for 2 minutes. Here's an EVP. Let's do an EVP for 2 minutes, right? Because they were making the video, and it's just one camera. There's no mics or anything, so everything's very. I wanted to make it so at least people would want to watch it. But the thing is...
So this was for like a promotional
Yeah, it's for their fundraiser of haunted stuff because there are ghost stories at the Overture Center. Cool. People have seen a couple dancing on the stage. People have heard an organist play when the organ is gone. And the organist, it was a guy that used to come in. He would play for all the people working at night cleaning up the theater. Like he would play music for them when they, like in the days before Walkmans. Or your iPods.
Yeah.
And people still hear that music, even now the organ's gone for cleaning. So that, so there's interesting ghost stories and stories at the Overture Center that they're going to tell. But they're like, oh, we should do some kind of ghost hunt. So it was like really like just showing off like how people do modern ghost hunts.
That's cool.
Between the the EMF meter and what an EVP is, and we even did. I wanted to do the Ouija board on the big stage, and little things like that would make it fun. But compared,
did you have them put a spotlight on you?
Oh, no, they didn't have all the crew there.
Oh darn! Oh, I suppose
yeah.
Probably very limited.
Yeah, and so, but it was a cool thing to do. It was a cool thing to get into and like get the foot in the door. It would be cool to actually do an investigation like they did at the museum there one time. But what I just thought was interesting was anybody can watch like a 4-hour video now of like, well, this is how it goes. If you think it's going to be, you walk in and you're attacked by demons like Zach Baggins, it's a little different. Right. When you're actually on the scene and doing the investigation.
It definitely takes a certain personality type to be able to, you got to have patience. You can't
Good Lord.
expect, like you said. I was going to say 4 hours compared to some of the ones that we've been on. 4 hours is a short amount of time.
Right.
Actually.
That seems quaint.
Yeah. Just a lot of sitting around in a cold, usually really freezing environment.
Well, at least it was warm inside the Overture Center, and it was also warm where they were in Chudnow. But the thing is, I think it's good for people who want to understand like what the modern day ghost hunting is, to see that it is that idea of going into a place and feeling like eventually you can be part of it. Like you spend enough time there and something might answer and you might pick it up through those electronic devices, or you might pick up a feeling. But it's not a come in and like all the haunts just happen. Yeah,
totally. In fact, if any haunts happen, it's like hitting the jackpot, even if the tiniest little,
it's like winning at the casino,
or movement or anything. Right.
It's like when you go to you're like, I won. Hey, I won. Yes. So that's what it feels like when you're there. And I've had a couple of weird things at Paranormal Investigations, so I'm not going to say it's a waste of time, but it's definitely acquired taste.
It's a commitment.
Yeah, it's a commitment to time. And if you are, what does Eckhart Tolle call it? Being in joy with yourself?
Oh.
Or something like if you're someone who can sit in a room quietly with your thoughts.
Okay.
And I even think there's some quote from a famous author. It says like, the majority of man's problems come from not being able to sit quietly alone in a room with his thoughts.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And so if you can do that, then you'd be okay on a paranormal investigation.
Kind of reminds me of that time when you and I stared into a mirror for 15 minutes and it felt like
15 hours.
like a day. Yeah.
We talked about the psychomantium because people see ghosts in the dressing room at the Overture Center.
Right.
So if they're in the dressing room and then they'll see like a woman doing her hair behind them real quick. And like,
oh my God.
They'll think that somebody else is in the dressing room. Like, oh, I'm sorry. Was somebody else in here? That they come out of the bathroom and not realize that they were in here? Kind of thing. So we talked about that. Like some people think that the mirror is a portal to the other side. You can see it's the Bloody Mary thing.
Uh-huh.
Or the Candyman, in case Bloody Mary is not gory enough for you.
Right.
All right. Well, we should get to the topic at hand. It's Tuesday, October 13th. Mm-hmm. And I didn't even realize this when we were talking about like stuff to talk about last night. First of all, it's the 13th of the month, number one. Number two, it's October 13th, which I realized was a big deal on the X-Files.
And why is that, Mike?
Because it's Chris Carter, the creator of the X-Files, that's his birthday, is October 13th.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And so they would sneak 1013 into a whole bunch of different X-Files stuff. First of all, he made it Mulder's birthday. So Fox Mulder was born on October 13th. That's the name of the production company, is 1013 Productions. So you hear that little voice after every episode of the X-Files that goes, I made this.
Oh, yeah.
That's the sound designer of that of the 1013 Productions company's daughter.
Oh.
And he just taped her saying that one time, and then he puts that as the ending. You know, like different shows have that different like tagline. Like there was that one, like sit, Ubu, sit, good dog.
Good dog.
It was a big one.
Yeah.
There was the MGM would have the lion, but then like on the Bob Newhart show, the MGM lion would have Bob Newhart go meow, kind of things. So those little tags, like the sound designers used to
meow.
Right, it was like meow. Used to sink in little sneak in little tags to the end of the shows to give it their own character. And then obviously 1013 Productions was I made this. The X-Files movie was released to video on October 13th, 1999. So 21 years ago tonight.
Crazy.
The X-Files album, which came out in 1996, I believe, came out when we were in college. It was a totally sweet album. It had the Foo Fighters, Better Than Ezra, The Cure, Bjork, Soul Coughing, Sarah McLachlan, in case you wanted to cry about animals in the middle of listening to an X-Files album. The Dust Brothers, which was, you know, like a techno, back when you used to call it techno, remix of the X-Files theme. Oh, I'm sorry. There was two different X-Files albums. The one I'm talking about actually on a different one than the first X-Files album, which has like Alice Cooper and White Zombie and everything. And I don't think I got this. I got the first X-Files album, but not this. Anyway, this was the X-Files album inspired by the movie, and the first one was the X-Files album inspired by the TV show. My bad, everybody. Even though like Soul Coughing still on both of them. But either way, the secret track that happens on the X-Files album happens at 10 minutes and 13 seconds into the hidden track at the end. So, Wendy, do you remember hidden tracks?
Oh, gosh, yeah. I loved hidden tracks. We made one on one of our albums.
We did. Now, the thing about hidden tracks, guys, if you weren't into the CD generation, so to have a hidden track on a CD, you could either put it in the beginning where you would have to rewind to the hidden track. So if you hit the rewind button, all of a sudden it starts going back. And you're like, wait, there's no music for the first song. And you rewind it to as far as it can go, and they could play hidden tracks. That's one way. The other way was to have like a blank track at the end of the CD. And then you start it at a certain time. So people who keep playing the CD and they don't shut it off after the last song, eventually the hidden track will start.
Just auto plays.
And that was a super popular thing in the 1990s for like little extra stuff. Like there was a hidden track on Dookie, Green Day. There's a hidden track on Tool's Undertow album. And there was a hidden track on the X-Files album based on the movie that came out in 1999. And that was 10 minutes and 13 seconds. So October 13th shows up again. And the X-Files would use 10:13. Like sometimes that would be the time and the clock. So whenever they needed a time for the clock, they would send in an office or something. They would send it to 10:13.
That's funny.
There was a United Nations Security Council Resolution 1013 that was in a cigarette smoking man episode that said any nation that obtains an alien life form must immediately eradicate it.
Okay.
So that was an episode that was saying that when the aliens land, we need to kill them. Of the UN. So that was UN Resolution 1013. 1013 is the timestamp of a couple of chapters in the book Ground Zero, which is an X-Files book that I had read back in, I think that was a gift from my girlfriend at the time. Was the first X-Files novel was Ground Zero, and she gave that to me. Yeah, good with gifts. That girlfriend was good with gifts. October 13th, 1973 in the show, a group of government agents makes contact with a group of greys, and the cigarette smoking man offers up his wife to the aliens in return for an alien fetus. So, cigarette smoking man, great guy. Obviously, he's like, you know what? We really want to have that alien body. Take my wife, please. Other times they use 1013. They had different rooms. Like they go into a room, something like that would be 1013. People have numbers on their suits or their uniforms and everything like that with 1013.
So is it something that they include in every episode or just from time to time?
Just from time to time, as much as they could.
Okay.
And they had several in-jokes like that. Like another was like one of the producer's daughters and stuff, like her birthday. So they would find dates that were important to them, and they would make them the numbers they used in production.
Okay.
So October 13th is kind of like, so that's what I was thinking about. I'm like, oh, it's October 13th. October 13th is like the X-Files number, like 1013.
Yeah, it's like X-Files Day.
It is like X-Files Day. Even though I think that the day they picked for an actual X-Files Day is not October 13th, which I thought was weird.
What?
Right.
Why not?
Hold on. Let me look up X-Files Day here. I just looked it up today, but it wasn't October 13th, so I didn't care. September the 25th, they were picking the anniversary of the day it came out. So that was September 10th, 1993 was the day the X-Files came out. So they were using September 10th as like the X-Files Day, which isn't 1013. So
yeah, I mean, it makes sense to have it on an anniversary, but still 1013 has more meaning.
Right. Also, when I was looking up X-Files history, October 13th, 1995 was when the episode Clyde Bruckman's Final Repose showed. So we were here at 8 o'clock on October 13th, 2020. And I can remember, so Clyde Bruckman's Final Repose is one of the most famous episodes from the third season. And it's the episode that Peter Boyle guest stars. Now, Peter Boyle was, everybody loves Raymond. He was Raymond's dad, famous for that.
Oh.
And I always think of him, he's Frankenstein from Young Frankenstein.
Okay.
So that's, what I think is Peter.
Iconic role.
Peter Boyle's greatest role. He's also great in a movie called The Dream Team, which is like a Michael Keaton movie from like 1989, which not a lot of people remember, but it's a fantastic film. But yeah, so Peter Boyle plays this guy, Clyde Bruckman, that his psychic power is that he can tell you how you're going to die.
Ooh.
And it's one of those episodes. It's like a funny episode, but also creepy. And it was one of the most popular episodes of the third season, Clyde Bruckman's Final Repose. And it played tonight at this time as we were talking 25 years ago. And I just remember sitting there. It was funny. That was a Scott talking about Peter Boyle putting on the roots. That's right. Yes. What a great part of Young Frankenstein. Like every time that comes on, when you first see that, you're like, oh my, that's the funniest thing. But I just remember that night. I remember watching it with my family and the girlfriend who knew I liked X-Files stuff. Because I'd come home from college that weekend. And we were all watching it together. So like it's funny to remember where you exactly were 25 years ago at an exact time. So when I saw that today, I'm like, oh, I know exactly what I did that day.
That's wild.
And that was today.
An impression on you, obviously.
Well, also the fact it's a quarter century ago. Like, that's another thing to me, that when you say, like, oh, yeah, well, that X-Files episode came out a quarter century ago, and you weren't, like, 5.
Right.
Right? You're like, oh, I was 18.
Right.
So that made it interesting to me that it came out 25 years ago. So that was a good one. And anyway, I just thought it was funny, these things about 10/13. I'm like, oh, it's kind of an X-Files day. And so then you're like, okay, what else happened on 13? And because people think that 13 is an unlucky number.
Yeah. Really?
Right?
Like, big time.
And so,
people do.
Like, what are some of the reasons that people think that 13 is an unlucky number? And, there's a few. There's a couple of ones that you think, like, okay, maybe. Like, why don't we, like, do buildings now, I feel like, have a 13th floor? Like a lot of them?
I think so. But sometimes, okay, well, for starters.
Yes.
The buildings that don't have a 13th floor.
Right. They have a 13th floor.
They just don't number that on the elevator, right? Like, right. Because when I was a kid, I thought that they just left a whole entire floor empty. Like, because it was so unlucky,
Right, but they're not that superstitious.
Right. So they just put the numbers on the on the elevator or whatever. They don't have a number 13, which is cheating if you ask me, really.
Right.
To be honest.
You do have a 13th floor. You just don't tell anybody about it.
Right.
So, and there was that movie, that
calling
13th.
It the 14th floor.
There's that movie called The 13th Floor, which is it was very much like The Matrix. Mm-hmm. But it kind of, because it came out the same year as The Matrix, it was pretty, nobody paid attention to it. But it was a pretty cool movie about like what actually was on the 13th floor. And it was an alternate universe or a computer simulation or something. Man, that's a pretty good movie. So some of the reasons people consider 13 unlucky: 13 people at the Last Supper. So that's not a great group of number of people, because the next day the guy in charge gets killed. They think the crucifixion happened. So the idea is the crucifixion happened on a Friday. So Jesus was killed on a Friday, but they also think it was the 13th. So that's unlucky, because any day that Jesus dies, it's not really lucky.
Right.
A witch's coven has 13 members, is what they believed.
That's good luck.
Well, not in the Middle Ages. Witches were not good luck. 13 letters in a name means the person is cursed. So if you go down to some names, Wendy's doing her own real quick.
Okay, I'm safe.
No, I think 15. I got 13.
What?
12. I think I'm good. Got scared for a second. Charles Manson, though. He's got 13. Jack the Ripper, 13. Jeffrey Dahmer. Theodore Bundy. All got 13. Adolf Hitler's baptismal name was Adolphus Hitler.
Okay.
13. Unlucky for some. Um, Super Bowl 13 was a huge financial setback for sports bookies.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. 1979 Super Bowl was bad. The spread kept changing and settling precisely at the game's actual spread, so the bookies lost a ton of money. But obviously, things were unlucky beforehand. Wendy the Wildest, a theory though, and I've seen this in several different places where people talk about why people think 13 is unlucky, is that women menstruate roughly 13 times a year.
So that makes it unlucky.
Because the 28 days. Because
What?
right, because 28 days means 13 times a year.
No, I know. I can do the math.
Okay, I'm
but
just
why
saying.
would that be unlucky?
I don't know. Because they used to call it the curse. But that's come up on more than one occasion where I'm like, okay, why is 13 unlucky?
God.
Well, it's because it's the number of menstrual cycles in a year. I'm like, what? I don't know who
Really?
came up with that theory.
Seriously?
But that's the theory.
It doesn't even make sense.
That's what's out there. So the things range from something reasonable to something a little questionable.
Well, getting back to the religious one, one of the things that I was reading that said during the Last Supper, there were 12 apostles and Jesus, and Judas was the unlucky 13th guest.
Oh yeah,
he betrayed Jesus, leading to this crucifixion. Can't talk tonight, but also in the book of Revelations, the apocalypse relates its 13th chapter to the Antichrist, so that gives another added negative connotation to it. So, and then also in other religious beliefs, the Kabbalah has 13 malevolent spirits.
Oh, okay. Well,
and
Scooby-Doo had
mythology.
Scooby-Doo had 13 ghosts. I used to watch that show. Yeah, I did.
And in Scandinavian mythology, Loki, god of evil, was the 13th guest invited to dinner in Valhalla. So more unlucky 13s. More, I guess, related to evil 13s, we could say.
What I think is interesting there, though, is that the number 13 then goes across different religions or different cultures. So if you're talking about a cross-cultural number that people think is unlucky, Loki is Norwegian or Scandinavian, right? Valhalla and all that business, the Vikings. And then obviously the Kabbalah is Jewish. And so that goes back to the Mediterranean and the Middle East. And then the Christian stuff is pretty Mediterranean and Jewish too. So that's kind of there. But that idea that cross cultures, different places find the number 13 sketchy, I think is an interesting thing. Now, while we have Friday the 13th as an unlucky day, even, I remember reading in a book when I was a kid that Mick Jagger refused to fly from England to the United States on Friday the 13th.
Really?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Sorry, Mick. My bad. The rest of the band wouldn't fly, but Mick would. Mick is the only one that would do it. He was the only one that would chance
dangerously.
it. He was the only one who'd be like, "Yeah, I'm flying. I'm going to U.S. Can't stop me."
Risk.
Friday the 13th. He didn't care. In different cultures, Tuesday the 13th is the unlucky day.
Yes. Isn't that funny? We find Friday the 13th to be unlucky, but in a lot of the Spanish-speaking countries, it is Tuesday.
And that Tuesday was is somewhat considered unlucky because of the relationship that Tuesday has to the god it's named after or something.
Yes, Martes comes from the planet Mars, named after the Roman god of war. So the people associate it with all of the nastiness that comes with war, death, blood, violence, that type of thing. So they think Tuesday, because of that, Tuesday is just unlucky already. And then when you pop on top of that, it being the 13th, it's like, oh my gosh, don't leave the house.
So Tuesday the 13th, I mean, is no bueno.
No, no, no.
And it's just a funny thing when you think of like, okay, when you think of luck and you think of the human component to luck, that we are making our own luck a lot of the time when with what we believe and the superstitions. And the, I was talking to somebody about this today because we were talking about why actors or performers or baseball players and athletes tend to be the most superstitious. And, so like actors won't talk about Macbeth, right? Oh, it's that Scottish play. Right. Don't talk about Macbeth. Baseball players have a certain thing they do before they go up to the dugout.
Ritual.
Yeah, actors have a certain way they do things, and then there's a ritual they perform, and that keeps making me think of Dean Radin in Real Magic, where he says that people who perform magic spells, it seems that something works for them, even if they don't believe in it. So even if you don't necessarily believe in magic or think the spell is going to work, if you do the ritual, if you do the spell, something happens. So is that something aligning our intention towards a certain way? Are we all, is it aligning our subconscious and our prefrontal cortex, everything together? So it says like we're moving in that direction.
It's training in a way, kind of like training your mind, training your physical, usually it involves some kind of a physical action that you're repeating over and over again while you're saying those words. And so, having all of those things tied together and then doing it usually multiple times somehow might be like programming yourself in a way.
Right. So it's not necessarily you're affecting the outer world as much as you were affecting your world and what you're thinking, what you're doing. And so are we doing that when we talk about luck? Is it saying, voodoo works if you believe in it? Okay, well, it seems like voodoo might work if you don't believe in it. I mean, that's what real magic says, like performing the ritual.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you believe it or not. Performing the ritual leads you in that direction. So if you say that Friday the 13th is unlucky, okay, now we're programmed for it. Now we see something happen on Friday the 13th. We're like, or Tuesday, Tuesday the 13th, no mas.
Right.
And you're like, oh man, this is like I'm blaming it on the day. Like I expected this day to be not fun, and here it is. And so it's this superstition that we kind of have to go through to kind of, it trains all of our mind, even the parts that we don't understand. And that it made me think about like why we have an unlucky day and why people would not do things and how we always thought it was silly. Well, if not having a 13th floor means that, that'd be an interesting study, right? You have buildings, hotels with a 13th floor and hotels without a 13th floor.
Yeah.
Like what are the results? Do more weird things happen on the 13th floor than happen on a hotel that does not have a 13th floor?
Or more bad things.
Right. Do more fights happen?
Because it's unlucky, so you want it to be like a negative connotation.
Right.
So if a hotel has not reassigned the name of the floor from 13 to 14, is it going to have more incidents of that type? I wonder.
And that's the kind of thing, like we want to say, like, okay, do more weird things happen? Like, while they say like more weird things happen on a full moon, they're like, well, the crime rate goes up, and that hasn't really been proven. Like that's just like an urban legend that everybody tells each other.
Right. And I remember, my sister used to waitress, and she would always swear that on the full moon, customers would always be tougher to deal with. Like, And all the servers would agree, like, oh yeah, no, it's a full moon. It's going to be a really tough
Watch
night
out.
with customer service.
The
Yeah.
lunatics are out.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the self-fulfilling prophecy. Like, you think it's going to be worse and it becomes worse. You stay on the 13th floor, you think something bad's going to happen, it does happen. And so through magic or a rosary or a voodoo spell or, whatever people do that puts them in the right direction. If through that we can influence our intention in a positive way, can these things of worrying about luck, of worrying about bad omens, of cracking the mirror, of, the black dog
Walking under a ladder.
or the black dog running
Yeah.
in front of you, can
Oh,
those things
yeah.
influence us in the same way? It's just a way of redirecting our intention. And because we have positive things, because we have spells and magic and rituals and OCD that makes us do positive things, or our bad luck, like Friday the 13th or Tuesday the 13th or broken mirrors, are they necessary so that we have some kind of balance to it? Like, are the positive things there because, would the positive things exist without the negative things on the other side? Would a blessing exist? Would you say, like, this person is blessing us, blah, 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 would, God's giving us a blessing or whatever, exist without the other aspect of the evil eye or the curse? Do both of those things have to exist in order to move our minds in the right direction at some point, and then we have to accept the fact that there's evil at the other point?
Or to keep the balance of the universe.
Right.
Right.
So you have to have some luck and some bad luck. You have to have some intention leading you the right way and some intention leading you the wrong way, in order to, I don't know. I mean, I guess that's very Manichaean, which is a certain religion from the beginning of the first, second century, that was all based on the balance of, if you have some good, you have to have some evil. Every good had to be balanced by an evil. Every
That's
coin.
rough.
I mean, it's a yin and yang. It's a Tao. Everything has to have an exact opposite. And so anyway, just thinking out loud, guys, before we go to the last crazy thing that happened on October 13th, at least the last crazy thing we're talking about tonight. And,
Right.
this is a group that I don't know if we've really talked about much on the show, but they feature heavily in conspiracy theory. They feature heavily in, things like, I'll be honest, I never saw the big Dan Brown movie or read the book. It wasn't
Da Vinci Code?
The Da Vinci Code, that's right. Even though I heard it's great, I just didn't go to a beach that summer.
I have the book, actually. I just have not gotten
I
around to
got
reading
to it.
it
All
yet.
right. Well, the Knights Templar are there. And it's this organization. The Knights Templar are basically formed during the Crusades as an ultra-religious group to help Christians on the way to the Holy Land. So the first crusade, the Europeans win back Jerusalem from the Muslims, the Saracens. And so so what happens is eventually, the Roman Empire owned Jerusalem in the time of Jesus, and then the Roman Empire eventually falls, gets taken over by the Goths and the barbarians and all the Germans who had mustaches. That was the big thing. You were a barbarian if you had a mustache. That was how you differentiated a Roman from a German, because the German would have a big stash. Like a trucker, like James Hetfield. Like James Hetfield would have been back in the day.
They're like hipsters a few years ago.
Right. The hipsters are total barbarians. And so the barbarian tribes come down and they want whatever Rome's got, because Rome's got gold and money and food and riches, and they want some. And Rome took their time taking over half of Europe itself, getting all the way up to France and England.
Yeah.
And then Africa. And so anyway, they come down, they destroy it, and then eventually I mean, Jerusalem gets taken over by the Muslims, and the Christians are like, okay, well, we need to take this back for Jesus or whatever. And so they start the first crusade, and they go down there, and it's all gruesome, killing and stuff. And the Knights, then they have several crusades to hold on to Jerusalem. And they have it for like maybe 100 years. And the Knights Templar are there to help people get down for religious pilgrimages to the Holy Land, coming from Europe. And a pilgrimage, like you're not just taking a plane from Paris to Jerusalem back then. I mean, you're taking a horse or you're walking. It is months long of travel to get to the Holy Land and come back. And so they're there and do that. And they're also there to hold on to the Temple Mount, which is a very sacred spot in Muslim culture, because it's where like Muhammad is ascended to heaven. It's a spot in Jerusalem, the Temple Mount. It's also super holy. It's like the most holiest spot in Jewish culture, because it's where Solomon built his temple, and then that was destroyed. And then they built another temple, and that was destroyed. And the idea is when the third temple is built, that's when the Messiah will come. Because the Jews don't buy into Jesus. They're like, no, the Messiah is going to come, but we got to build the third temple first. And so the Knights Templar are the ones who take care of the temple. They're the ones, while the Christians have it during the crusade, they're the ones who take care of the temple. But the thing is, there's plenty of people who join the Knights Templar who aren't necessarily crusading warriors, even though you could recognize the Knights Templar crusading warriors when you think of the classic idea of a crusader. A white shirt with a big red cross on it. That's the Knights Templar that you're thinking of. They also developed like money lending. And so the Knights Templar develops these institutions all over Europe during this time, the Crusades, that they would, like, they'd get money from from taking all these people back and forth. And they themselves, the Knights themselves, said they were going to be impoverished. They don't drink, they don't spend, they try not to sin. And so they take like vows of poverty. And so the money goes back into the organization that people give them. And then they get super rich and basically form the first banks. So the Knights Templar forms a bank, and it becomes the first kind of multinational corporation.
Wow.
And they're loaning out money to different European rulers who are always in hock.
Okay.
So eventually what happens to them is that on October 13th, and I can't remember.
Here we go.
So on October 13th, let me find it here, of which year it was. The French King Philip says that the Knights Templar are enemies of the faith. The French King Philip IV, he also owes the Knights Templar about, like, he's way in over his head because they lent him a ton of money. This is how they establish power in these institutions, all over, because they're lending money to all of these different kings and queens. And this is why nobody complained when the French kings are like, we won't be able to, we won't be able to pay you back. So we're going to have to declare you an enemy of the king. Now, at the time, there's also a fight in the church where there's different popes. The Vatican moves from Rome to Avignon, France, and they get like these competing popes in these different places. So now there's a pope in France who's under the authority of the king. And the king's like, Knights Templar, gotta go because I don't want to pay my money. And the pope's like, okay. He's got to go along with it because he's inside the kingdom and he has to rely on the king for some protection. So October 13th in, 1311? Nope, sorry. 1307 is when they ordered it. The Templars were they said that the Templars were forced to spit on the cross when they joined, engage in indecent kissing. They worshipped idols and encouraged homosexual practices. And so this is what they said, what they were charged with, in addition to financial corruption, fraud, and secrecy. And so the Knights Templar get disbanded, kicked out, and eventually a bunch of them get burned at the stake as heretics.
It's pretty horrible.
Well, the real crime, of course, was being really good with money. And then people with bigger weapons ended up saying, like, well, we can take care of it.
We're going to take it.
Yeah. When the revolution comes, the Knights Templar were the first ones with their backs against the wall.
Apparently.
Okay.
Who knew
So the
on
organization
this day?
disappears, right? And an interesting thing that we saw when we were at the Paradigm Symposium in Minneapolis, Wendy, was the first speaker was talking about the Knights Templar and how he said that it wasn't about money. The reason that they were disbanded and killed, it was because when they were at the Temple Mount, they discovered that there was no temple.
Oops.
So an atheist would not be surprised by this, but discover that at the Temple Mount there was no temple means that Solomon never existed. And
that's big.
Then you don't have the authority, so the church never happened. So that was his theory, that Solomon never existed, and that they realized that the Holy Land was all a sham kind of thing, and this history was made up because they could not find any evidence of Solomon's first temple. That actually is a super controversial thing because that idea is popular in like the Muslim world. And it's because even Yasser Arafat, he said when they came to the White House in 2000, when they were like Bill Clinton was trying to have these last, like 1999, or like he was trying to have these last accords between Israel and Palestine. Yasser Arafat's like, well, the Temple Mount wasn't the location of the Jewish temple. That was somewhere else. And because that temple was there, that is like Israel's claim to Jerusalem. So it's this idea that there's these places in Jerusalem that the Palestinians want. And if you say that the Jewish people don't have a claim to it from Solomon, that goes against the idea that they're like that the Holy Land or Jerusalem is the place that they should have control over because they had it first, even if it was 3,000 years ago. But that's just an interesting thing because that connects into the Knights Templar, this theory that since they discovered that religion wasn't real, the king's like, well, we got to kill them because then we can't have control over the populace. And that belief is popular in like the Palestinian world today because that belief also gives them control over this political thing thousands of years after the original thing happened. So the Knights Templar end up being bad guys in video games and movies. There's legends that they went on to protect the Holy Grail, which was the cup that Jesus drank from at this unlucky Last Supper with 13 people. And they become a center of conspiracy theories because it's this idea that the Knights Templar eventually become the Freemasons. And that's where Don DeLillo Marquette, who we saw talk about the Knights Templar, he was like I don't know what level a Freemason was, but he was pretty close to Mr. Freemason himself. So it all comes to like, it's just interesting. So October 13th in 1307 is the day that the King Philip IV's like, y'all gonna die. And you're never going to get my money. And then we could do a whole thing on the Knights. We will do a whole thing on the Knights Templar. But I just kind of wanted to bring it up.
That would be interesting.
Because
topic.
today, I mean, and connecting it, like the fact that the things that people were saying about them also now connect to modern politics. To something that was said, like, I think the U.S. Secretary of State had to say to Yasser Arafat, he's like, the U.S. president believes that Solomon's temple was at the Temple Mount. So it doesn't matter what you say about that. Like, that's not a negotiating point.
Right.
That's not, he's like, That's not so. That came up in the White House 20 years ago. This idea that the Knights Templar found out that the temple was not at the Temple Mount.
That's crazy.
So okay, we wanted to play one song today because where were we a year ago, Wendy?
Where were we a year ago?
We
Let's
were
see,
in
it was,
Louisville.
Oh, that's right.
At the Imaginarium Convention.
So much fun.
We were at the Louisville at the Imaginarium Convention. So we thought we would play real quick a song from the Imaginarium Convention that Scott from What's Your Ghost Story put together for us. Now, Scott's going to be, is he going to be on it tomorrow night?
Yes, actually, tomorrow night's going to be a really special edition of the What's Your Ghost Story weekly live cast. And we're going to be, I'm saying we because I'm going to be a special guest on it.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, and we're going to be visiting with Scott's co-host of his fantastic Story Society podcast in a special, safe, socially distanced location. And we're going to be talking about Wisconsin ghost stories and lore and that type of thing because he also grew up in Wisconsin. So
Very
we're
cool.
going to compare notes from our youth here in Wisconsin and see if we had, we didn't grow up in the same region of Wisconsin, so
Sure.
it'll be interesting to see how the different folklore compared. But yeah, so that'll be at 5:45 tomorrow because the sunset is getting earlier and earlier.
Certainly
on us.
is.
But you can check it out on the What's Your Ghost Story webpage, and Scott will be leading that as he always does.
Great.
Lively discussion.
So make sure you check that out,
looking forward to it.
545, facebook.com/What's Your Ghost Story, and you can join them for that. Wendy's going to be a special guest. And from an undisclosed location, which is even exciting. So, and then Scott's joining us here on stage at the Imaginarium Convention last year. And I'm going to fast forward to this particular song, but we do a little description. And I thought this is the one that turned out best, and this little digging up the dead. And we even give it a little intro.
What we're going to do tonight, we're going to
finding ways to express painful things and turn something ugly into something that we can process and enjoy or at least make it through, seems to be the purpose of art.
Sure. So, Wendy, I'll go to you. One of your guests, previous guest, a really fun storyteller, and we'll lead into a song here, was Jeff Belanger. Yeah. So if you could talk a little bit about who he is and what you guys talk about, and then maybe you can each talk a little bit about the song that we're about to hear.
Yeah, definitely. So we did an interview with Jeff Belanger, who is a paranormal history researcher. And he has a podcast called New England Legends, where he tells a different ghost story from New England every week. But he's also a researcher for the TV show Ghost Adventures. So he'll do a lot of the location research when they go and do their ghost hunts and whatnot. And so he is just a great storyteller, and especially at telling the kinds of stories that we love, the ones that are about ghosts or vampires or weird things. And one of the stories that he told us was just particularly, I don't know how you'd say it, moving, gruesome.
Grotesque, dark, yeah.
1892 Rhode Island, you have a family, the Browns, and this is coming on to be, fall in Rhode Island, and things are starting to get colder, and in the Browns, the brother dies of tuberculosis, and then the sister dies of tuberculosis, and then the rest of the family starts getting sick. Now, people were superstitious still in 1892. This is after the Civil War. I mean, I have grandparents only born like in 1897, so this is not even that far away from what I think of people I knew. But they thought, since everybody was getting sick, that maybe the girl who died, the sister, Mercy was her name, so Mercy Brown, that she was somehow coming back, and she was making her brother and her father sick. As a vampire, right? Not just she was coming back from the dead, and feeding on her brother and father while they were sleeping. And so they went to go check the body. But the thing is, this is New England in the 1890s. They don't have like caterpillar earth movers to put bodies in the soil. So what they did was they just kind of stored them for the winter. And so they go find Mercy's body. She's still above ground. They open up her casket. And, sometimes after you pass, gases get passed out of you and, blow out of you.
and sometimes there's a little bit of blood inside. And what they saw was blood all over her mouth. And they thought, Mercy Brown is a vampire.
Yeah, evidence.
Right. Mercy Brown is a vampire. And they told her family, the only way that you can rid your family of this curse is cutting out her heart, burning it, and eating the ashes. So they did. She wasn't in the dirt yet, so they cut out her heart, they burned it, and they ate the ashes, and died anyway, because Mercy Brown was not a vampire. But that's a story. So that's an interesting story. Where like, okay, what's the interesting kernel there? It's the idea that you're rehashing things. You're going back to places you don't need to go to. You're doing things you don't need to do, and it's just digging up the dead. And so then we wrote a song about that. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Females and rockwood and up in every scene. I spit the dirt out of my mouth. I wake up from a dream to be thirsty like I've never been. A constant agony and this blackjack that runs at my back and dance my memory. Lord, grant us mercy from afar. Forgive the prayers we should have said. Oh, you can burn up my heart and eat the ashes that I lay. But you're just digging up the dead. Should be left alone, they're not for man to touch. The past is just a shadow grave that's best left in the dust. We keep eating the pale horse, or the blood just turns to rust. And you can't cheat the devil by remembering too much. Lord, grant us mercy from above. Forgive the prayers we should have said. Oh, you can burn up my house. You're just digging up the dead. Yeah, you're just digging up the dead. Oh, you're just digging up the dead. Oh, you're just digging up the dead. Yeah, you're just digging up the
So that.
Okay, well there we are. That was Digging Up Dead, a little bit from a year ago. I'm not sure if it was tonight. I think it was a year ago yesterday. It might have been a year ago today.
Was it?
I
thought it was early. Oh, anyway.
I didn't know if it was Friday the 13th last year. It was in October. Either way, it was either
fun event.
It was either the 12th or the 13th. We were in Louisville and playing that song. So we're going to play a song that we played a year ago tonight or
Crazy.
yesterday night. Either way.
How things have changed since then.
Yeah, right. Now we're sitting here on the internet and I'm in a weird room with strange hands behind me. Okay, so if you guys like the kind of stuff you're hearing, please check out patreon.com/sunspotmusic. If you're watching on YouTube later or something like that, it's a great place where we have a community together where we talk about weird stuff and rock and roll and new songs and all those kind of things. And we'd love for you to be a part of it. So please check out patreon.com/sunspotmusic. For anybody watching live or in the next couple of days, we will be back for Thirsty Thursday on this Thursday, 7:30 p.m. from the Sunspot Music account. We will be having some cocktails, talking about some music stories, having fun, and then we got some music for you too. So it is going to be a lot of fun. And don't forget to check out What's Your Ghost Story tomorrow night, facebook.com/What's Your Ghost Story. And then you can join Wendy and Scott and from an undisclosed haunted location in southeastern Wisconsin. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So everybody out there, have a great week. Have a great Tuesday the 13th. So if you're Spanish speaking, don't worry, it's almost over. You have a couple hours left, and Tuesday the 13th
That's
is
right.
over.
You made it this far.
You did. And I did not realize Tuesday the most unlucky day of the week. I always had my day was Wednesday was the unlucky day for me.
Oh,
Like
weird.
starting in like when I was like 13, I was like most bad things to me happen on Wednesday. So that was my superstition. Wednesday, do you ever have that? Do you ever have that?
No,
All right. Well,
I
trust
didn't
me.
have a certain day that was unlucky.
I used to wake up and I'm like Wednesday. Oh, I don't want it.
Get ready, brace yourself.
Yeah. So either way,
Funny.
we'll see everybody in just a couple of days. Thank you to everybody that joined us, and have a great night. And we'll see you on the other side.